Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. Tonight's story begins with a scream on a dark street in Hanoi, when an American black woman is robbed, ignored by the crowd, and saved by one man who changes her fate forever. What followed was love, danger, and a promise neither of them planned. If you love intense, emotional stories, subscribe now so you don't miss a single moment. Hanoi didn't feel like a foreign city to Ashley Brown anymore. At 26, the American black woman had learned the rhythm, motorbikes flowing like water, street vendors calling out under green trees, the smell of coffee and grilled meat mixing in the air. She lived quietly on 2 Njok Van Street, Tay Ho District, where many expats rented small apartments and tried to build new lives. That afternoon, Ashley was walking home from tutoring with a tote bag slung across her shoulder. Inside it were the things her entire life depended on: her passport, visa papers, lesson notes, her phone, and the little pouch of cash she kept for rent. She held the strap tightly, not paranoid, just careful, because Hanoi was beautiful. But Ashley had learned one hard truth since moving here: if something went wrong, you were on your own. She turned onto a busy road near Xuandiu Street, where the traffic thickened and the sidewalk narrowed. Motorbikes squeezed past her, inches from her elbow. A cluster of people stood around a fruit cart. Someone laughed. A child cried. Life moved fast. Ashley stepped closer to the curb, preparing to cross. And in one violent second, everything changed. A motorbike shot in from behind, so close the wind slapped her cheek. A hand yanked her tote bag. The strap tore across her shoulder like a whip. Ashley stumbled. The bike surged forward with her bag swinging from the thief's arm like a prize. For a heartbeat, Ashley didn't process it. Then her body reacted. "No, no, my bag!" she screamed, voice cracking. She chased instinctively, shoes slapping the pavement, heart exploding in her chest. "Help! Please, help me!" Ashley shouted, switching between English and broken Vietnamese. "Kuop! Kuop! Help me! My passport!" She pointed wildly at the thief's motorbike as it weaved through traffic. People turned their heads. Some stared. A few stepped back. But no one moved. Not one person ran. Not one person shouted after the thief. Not one person even tried to block the path. Ashley's lungs burned as she ran a few more steps, then stopped, terrified of being hit by a motorbike. She stood at the edge of the street, shaking, watching her life disappear down the road. "Please!" she cried again, voice higher now, desperate. "Please, somebody! He took my bag, my passport! Please!" A middle-aged man looked at her, then looked away. A woman holding groceries tightened her grip and walked faster. 2 teenagers glanced at each other and smirked, like it was an awkward show they didn't want to join. Ashley felt her throat tighten until she couldn't swallow. Because it wasn't just theft, it was abandonment. Without that passport, she couldn't renew her visa. Without her phone, she couldn't call her landlord, her students' parents, anyone. Without her documents, she could lose everything in a matter of days. Ashley's hands shook as she tried to think. Then she saw the thief again, just for a second, turning into a narrower street ahead, motorbike leaning hard as he vanished between buildings. Ashley took one step forward to run again, and froze. A man stepped out from the crowd behind her, moving with sudden speed. Tall, Vietnamese, late 20s. He wore a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled, dark trousers, a watch that looked expensive but understated. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, focused like a blade. Ashley didn't know his name. She didn't know he was Jack Trung, CEO of Ban Mai Real Estate. All she knew was that he was the only one moving. "Which way?" he asked in Vietnamese, then repeated in English, quick and clear. "Which way did he go?" Ashley's voice trembled. "That! There! Left! He turned left!" Jack didn't hesitate. He broke into a sprint. Not a lazy jog, not a half-hearted chase. A real sprint, cutting through the sidewalk crowd, darting into the street at the right moment, slipping between motorbikes like he'd grown up in this chaos. Ashley watched, stunned. He was fast. Too fast for a man in office clothes. Jack reached the corner and vanished from view. For a moment, Ashley stood frozen, hands pressed to her mouth, chest heaving. Then the fear returned. What if Jack got hurt? What if the thief had a weapon? What if nobody helped him either? Ashley looked around again. Still, no one moved. Still, no one cared enough to follow. The crowd returned to itself like nothing had happened. Ashley felt a wave of cold anger rise. She wasn't just a woman who got robbed. She was a foreigner now, someone people could watch suffer without consequence. Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. She pulled her shoulder strap where it had snapped and checked her pocket. Nothing. Her phone was gone. Her wallet was gone. Her hands shook so hard she could barely stand still. Minutes passed like hours. Ashley paced in a small circle, eyes locked on the street where Jack had disappeared. Every motorbike that passed made her flinch. Then, suddenly, a shout. Voices ahead. A motorbike screeched to a stop. Ashley's head snapped up. And there he was. Jack came back into view, breathing hard, hair slightly disheveled, shirt tugged loose at the collar. In his hand, her tote bag. Ashley's knees nearly buckled. She stumbled forward. "Oh my God, you got it?" Jack lifted the bag slightly, chest still rising and falling. "Yes," he said, voice steady. "You're okay?" Ashley grabbed the bag with both hands like it was oxygen. Her fingers dug into the fabric, checking the zipper, shaking as she opened it. Passport. Still there. Visa documents. Still there. Her lesson notes. Her keys. She let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. Then she looked up at Jack, eyes wet. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. No one—" Her voice broke. Jack's expression softened. He glanced toward the crowd behind her, then back to Ashley. "They didn't help?" he asked quietly. Ashley shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. Jack exhaled slowly, jaw tightening, not at her, but at the world around her. "Come," he said gently. "Let's get you somewhere safe." As they began walking, Ashley didn't notice the way Jack stayed slightly ahead, positioning himself between her and the street. Protective without showing off. And Jack didn't notice, yet, that this moment, this one decision to run when nobody else did, was about to change both of their lives. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Would you chase a thief to help a stranger? Because in the next scene, Ashley learns who Jack really is, and the city that ignored her cries will watch her fate turn in a way nobody expected. Ashley clutched her tote bag to her chest like it was her heartbeat. They walked along the sidewalk near Xuandiu Street, the traffic still roaring, motorbikes sliding past as if nothing had happened. The crowd behind them had already forgotten her scream. People returned to their fruit carts, their conversations, their phones. Ashley couldn't. Her hands trembled as she checked the zipper again. Passport, visa papers, keys, lesson notes, phone. Her phone was still there. She swallowed hard, relief and shock battling inside her chest. Jack kept a steady pace, a half step ahead of her, not rushing her, but making sure she wasn't exposed to the street side. He glanced back once, his eyes scanning her face like he was looking for signs of injury. "You're not hurt?" he asked, calm. Ashley's voice shook. "My shoulder. It's okay. Just thank you. I don't know what to say." Jack nodded slightly, as if he didn't need gratitude. He pointed to a small cafe ahead, lights warm behind the glass. "Sit there," he said. "You need water, and you need to breathe." Ashley hesitated. Trust didn't come easy when you'd just been abandoned in public. But Jack's tone wasn't pushy. It wasn't flirtatious. It was practical, like he'd done this before. They entered the cafe and sat near the back. The air smelled like coffee and pastry. Ashley's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She set the bag on her lap, gripping it with both arms. Jack ordered quickly in Vietnamese, then returned with 2 bottles of water. He slid one to her. Ashley drank too fast, choking a little. Her eyes stung with tears she didn't want to show. Jack watched quietly. After a moment, he asked, "What was in the bag?" Ashley swallowed. "My passport, my visa papers, my phone, everything. If I lose that—" Her voice cracked. "I can't stay. I'm alone here." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly, like something in him didn't like that sentence. "Where are you from?" he asked. "United States," Ashley said. "Chicago." Jack nodded once. "How long in Hanoi?" "Almost 2 years." Ashley tried to laugh, but it sounded broken. "Long enough to think I understood how things work." Jack didn't smile. "You screamed," he said, as if confirming a fact. "They heard you." Ashley stared down at her hands. "Yes," she whispered. "They heard me." Jack's jaw tightened. And still. Ashley felt humiliation heat her cheeks. "It's my fault," she said softly. "I should have been more careful." Jack's voice was calm but firm. "No, don't say that." Ashley looked up. Jack held her gaze. "A thief did it, not you." Ashley's eyes filled again, but she blinked it away. Jack reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone. "We should report it," he said, "even if you got your bag back." Ashley hesitated. "Police. Will it matter?" Jack's eyes stayed steady. "It matters." Ashley nodded reluctantly. Jack made a call in Vietnamese, short and controlled, then turned back to Ashley. "We'll go to the local station nearby," he said. "You'll give a statement. I'll explain what happened." Ashley's shoulders sagged. "You don't have to do that." Jack's answer came instantly. "I know." He stood, and Ashley followed, still hugging the bag close. Outside, the wind was colder than before. Ashley's shoulder ached where the strap had ripped, and the adrenaline crash made her legs feel weak. As they walked, Jack asked casually, "What do you do here?" Ashley hesitated. "I teach English." Jack glanced at her. "At a center?" "Private tutoring," Ashley said. "Mostly kids, some adults. I like it." Jack's eyes softened slightly, like that detail mattered to him. "You live in Tay Ho?" he asked. "Yes, to Kivan," Ashley said. "Near the lake," Jack nodded. "A lot of foreigners there." Ashley's laugh was thin. "Yes, but today I didn't feel foreign. I felt invisible." Jack stopped walking for a second. Ashley paused too, confused. Jack looked at her, expression controlled but honest. "You were not invisible," he said quietly. "I saw you." Ashley's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak, so she nodded once. They reached a small police office near Tay Ho District, lights bright and official. Inside, an officer listened while Jack explained what happened. Ashley gave her name, her passport number, the time, the location. She felt exposed saying it out loud, like making the theft real gave it power. When the report was done, Ashley stepped outside, exhaling shakily. Jack looked at her shoulder. "Your strap is broken." Ashley glanced down. The torn strap hung like a wound. "It's fine," she said quickly. "I can sew it." Jack's eyes narrowed. "That's not fine," Ashley tried to smile. "It's just a bag." Jack didn't answer. He simply took out his phone and typed something. Ashley frowned. "What are you doing?" "Calling someone," Jack said. "A driver. He'll take you home." Ashley's eyes widened. "No, that's too much. I can take a taxi." Jack met her gaze. "After what happened, no." Ashley felt her pride flare. "I don't want to be a burden," she said. Jack's voice stayed calm. "You're not." Ashley swallowed. "You don't even know me." Jack looked at her for a long moment, then spoke lower. "I know enough," he said. "You're alone. You're far from home. And you lost your voice on the street today." Ashley's chest tightened. Jack continued, "I don't like that." Before Ashley could respond, a black car pulled up. The driver got out respectfully and nodded to Jack. Ashley froze. This wasn't a normal ride. This was the kind of car that belonged to money. Jack opened the back door for her, but didn't touch her, just held it open. Ashley stared at him. "Who are you?" Jack paused, as if choosing what truth to give. "My name is Jack Trung," he said. "That's all you need right now." Ashley hesitated, then slid into the car, still clutching her bag. Jack leaned slightly toward the open door. "Text me when you're inside," he said. Ashley blinked. "Why?" Jack's eyes held hers. "Because I want to know you're safe." The door closed gently. As the car pulled away, Ashley watched Jack through the window. He stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the street like he was still searching for danger. Ashley's heart pounded with confusion. A stranger had chased a thief for her when nobody else moved. A stranger had filed a police report with her. A stranger had arranged a driver. And he hadn't asked for anything. Not a number, not a date, not even thanks. When Ashley reached to Ngiuk Van Street, she stepped out and walked into her building, still shaking. Inside her apartment, she locked the door, leaned back against it, and finally let a sob slip out. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, already saved by the driver's phone system. "Jack. You inside?" Ashley stared at the screen, then typed slowly. "Ashley. Yes. I'm safe. Thank you." A pause. Then, "Jack. Good. Rest. Tomorrow, I want to ask you something." Ashley's breath caught. She typed, "Ashley. Ask me what?" Jack replied, "Jack. About your English class." Ashley stared, puzzled, because she'd only mentioned it once. And yet, he remembered. She set the phone down, heart still racing. Outside, motorbikes kept moving. The city kept breathing. But Ashley felt it, deep in her bones. That scream on the street had been the beginning. And Jack Trung wasn't just a stranger who helped. He was the first person in Hanoi who had made her feel like she mattered. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Have you ever been ignored when you needed help most? Because in the next scene, Ashley learns the truth about who Jack really is, and a new tragedy hits her, one that could force her to leave Vietnam forever. Ashley didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the motorbike rushing past her shoulder, felt the strap tearing, heard her own voice echoing, "Help, please," into a crowd that chose silence. Morning came quietly over to Ngoc Van Street, sunlight sliding through the thin curtains of her small apartment. The lake outside looked peaceful, almost mocking. Ashley sat at the edge of her bed, passport still in her hands. She checked it again. Still real. Still hers. But the fear hadn't left. At 8:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. "Jack. Good morning. Are you okay today?" Ashley stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Ashley. I think so. Just tired. A pause. Then, Jack. I meant what I said. I want to talk about your English class. Can we meet? Ashley hesitated. Meeting strangers after trauma wasn't wise. But Jack didn't feel like a stranger anymore. He felt steady. Ashley. Okay, after my class. Near Westlake? Jack. There's a small cafe on Quang An Street, 6 p.m. Ashley agreed. The rest of her day passed in fragments. She taught 3 children in the afternoon, 2 brothers and their cousin, inside a cramped living room near Ngai Tam. The kids laughed, mispronounced words, asked her why English spelling made no sense. Ashley smiled and corrected them gently, but inside, she felt hollow. When class ended, one of the mothers hesitated at the door. "Teacher Ashley," she said softly in Vietnamese, "you look tired." Ashley forced a smile. "I'm okay." The woman nodded, then pressed some extra cash into Ashley's hand. "For tea," she said. Ashley tried to refuse. The woman insisted. Ashley accepted, throat tight. She walked out into the street feeling smaller than she had the day before. By the time she reached the cafe on Quang An Street, dusk had settled over West Lake, lights reflecting on the water. Jack was already there. Not in a suit. No tie. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, hair slightly messy, like he'd been working all day. He stood when he saw her. "Hi," he said. Ashley nodded. "Hi." They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jack broke the silence. "Did anyone follow you today?" he asked. Ashley blinked. "No." Jack nodded, like that mattered. He gestured to her bag. "You fixed the strap." Ashley glanced down. "I did." Jack studied her face. "You don't look okay," he said. Ashley laughed quietly. "You're very direct." Jack's mouth lifted slightly. "I don't like guessing." Ashley inhaled. "Yesterday scared me," she admitted. "Not just the theft. The way nobody helped." Jack nodded slowly. "Hanoi can be kind, and it can be cold." Ashley looked down at her hands. "I've lived here almost 2 years. I thought I belonged." Jack's voice was calm. "Belonging doesn't come from crowds." Ashley met his gaze. "Why did you run after him?" she asked suddenly. Jack didn't answer immediately. He looked out at the lake, then back at her. "Because I would want someone to run if it were my sister," he said. "Or my mother." Ashley's throat tightened. "And," Jack continued, "because I was already angry before I heard you scream." Ashley frowned. "Angry about what?" Jack hesitated, then said, "People who pretend not to see." Ashley nodded slowly. Jack leaned forward slightly. "Now, about your English class." Ashley straightened instinctively. "Yes?" "I want to enroll," Jack said. Ashley blinked. "Enroll?" "Yes," Jack replied. "Private lessons. Speaking. Business English." Ashley stared at him. "You don't sound like someone who needs basic English," she said carefully. Jack's mouth curved. "I don't, but I want to improve." Ashley hesitated. "I usually teach kids." "I know," Jack said. "That's why I'm asking." Ashley's pulse quickened. "Why?" she asked again. Jack answered honestly. "Because I want to support you without insulting you." Ashley froze. That sentence landed heavier than she expected. Jack continued, "I don't want to give you money. I want to pay you for your work." Ashley swallowed hard. "You don't even know my rates," she said quietly. Jack shrugged. "You'll tell me." Ashley studied him. This wasn't charity. This was respect. Still, something in her tightened. "I need to tell you something," Ashley said suddenly. Jack waited. "I'm not stable," she said. Financially, my visa expires soon. If I lose students, I might have to leave Vietnam. Jack's eyes sharpened. Why? My landlord raised rent, Ashley said, and some parents stopped classes recently. Jack leaned back, processing. And you didn't tell anyone, he said. Ashley gave a bitter smile. I don't have anyone. Jack looked at her carefully. Then let me be clear, he said. I'm not enrolling out of pity. Ashley's eyes met his. I'm enrolling because you're good at what you do, Jack said, and because I want to learn from you. Ashley exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Once a week. Jack nodded. Deal. They exchanged schedules. As Ashley typed his name into her phone, she noticed something odd. Jack didn't list an office address. Where do you work? She asked casually. Jack paused, then said, Nam Tu Liem. Ashley nodded. Office job? Yes, Jack said. He didn't lie, but he didn't tell her the whole truth. Not yet. They stood to leave. Outside, the air was cool, the lake calm. Jack walked her a few steps, then stopped. Ashley, he said. She turned. Yesterday, he said quietly, when no one helped you, remember this. Ashley waited. You were not ignored because you didn't matter, Jack said. You were ignored because people were afraid. Ashley's eyes burned. Jack continued, and fear says more about them than you. Ashley nodded, unable to speak. She walked home with lighter steps than the night before, but inside, a storm was forming. Because as Ashley unlocked her door later that night, her phone buzzed with an email. From her landlord. Subject, Notice of Termination. Her rent would increase immediately. She had 30 days. Ashley slid down against the door, heart pounding. 30 days. 30 days to decide if her life in Vietnam was over. And she hadn't told Jack yet. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Should someone lose everything just because they're alone in a foreign country? Because in the next scene, Ashley's biggest fear becomes real, and Jack finally reveals who he truly is. Ashley stared at the email until the words blurred. Notice of termination, 30 days, immediate rent adjustment. Her apartment on 2 NGOC Van Street felt smaller than it ever had. The walls that once felt safe now felt temporary, like everything else in her life. She pressed her forehead against the door and breathed. 30 days. 30 days before she lost her home. 30 days before her visa became a question mark again. 30 days before Hanoi, this city she had grown to love, might spit her back out. Ashley wiped her eyes and stood up. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She did what she'd always done when things went wrong. She made a list. Rent increase. Deposit required. Visa extension fee. Lost students. Emergency savings. Almost gone. The numbers didn't lie. She needed help. And that terrified her more than losing everything. The next morning, Ashley went to teach as if nothing had changed. Her first class was in a small apartment near Nchi Tam, where 3 children waited for her with notebooks open and wide smiles. "Teacher Ashley," they shouted. She smiled back, hiding the storm inside her chest. They practiced simple sentences. They laughed when one boy mixed up beach and bitch. Ashley corrected him gently, pretending her heart wasn't racing the entire time. When class ended, the children's grandmother walked her to the door. "You look worried today," the woman said softly. Ashley shook her head. "Just tired." The woman nodded, but pressed a bag of oranges into Ashley's hands anyway. "For strength," she said. Ashley thanked her, throat tight. By the afternoon, Ashley had received 2 more messages. One parent canceled lessons indefinitely. Another asked for a discount, Ashley sat on a bench near West Lake, staring at the water, feeling the city move around her without noticing she was slipping. Her phone buzzed. Jack. How's your day? Ashley typed, erased, typed again. Ashley. Can we talk later? Something important. The reply came quickly. Jack. Of course. Where? Ashley. Near your office? A pause. Then. Jack. Okay. 7 p.m. Gyeongnam. Ashley froze. Gyeongnam? The name alone carried weight. That wasn't just an office building. That was power. She stared at the message, heart pounding. Ashley. Is that convenient? Jack. Yes, I'll meet you at the lobby. Ashley set the phone down slowly. Something about Jack didn't fit anymore. By 6:45 p.m., Ashley stood outside Gyeongnam Landmark 72, looking up at the glass tower that pierced the sky. She felt out of place in her simple clothes, tote bag slung over her shoulder, heart pounding like she was about to walk into an exam she hadn't studied for. Jack was already there, not in a suit, but the way people greeted him, security nodding, staff stepping aside, made something click in Ashley's mind. Hi, Jack said calmly. Ashley searched his face. You work here? Jack nodded. Yes. They walked inside. The lobby was quiet, polished, intimidating. Ashley stopped near the elevators. Jack, she said, voice low. What do you do exactly? Jack looked at her. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, I run a company. Ashley's chest tightened. How big? Jack didn't dodge it anymore. Ban my real estate, he said. I'm the CEO. The world tilted. Ashley stared at him, her pulse roaring in her ears. You're… what? She whispered. Jack watched her carefully. I didn't hide it to deceive you. Ashley took a step back. You let me think you were just… Her voice broke. Just someone normal. Jack's jaw tightened. I am normal. Ashley shook her head, emotion rising fast. No, you're not. Not like me. People passed by. Ashley didn't care. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded. Jack answered honestly. Because I didn't want it to change how you looked at me. Ashley laughed sharply. It changes everything. Jack stepped closer, but stopped when he saw her stiffen. Ashley, he said quietly, I enrolled in your class because I respect you, not because I'm rich. Ashley's eyes burned. Then why does it feel like charity now? Jack's voice lowered. Because you're hurting. Ashley swallowed hard. Come upstairs, Jack said. Please, let's talk somewhere quiet. Ashley hesitated, then followed. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened, Ashley stepped into a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Hanoi. It was beautiful, and it made her feel incredibly small. Jack gestured to a chair. Sit. Ashley didn't. My landlord raised my rent, she said suddenly. 30 days. I might lose my visa. I'm losing students. Jack's expression darkened. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Ashley's voice shook. Because I didn't want you to save me. Jack didn't raise his voice. I don't want to save you. Ashley snapped. Then what do you want? Jack met her eyes. To stand with you. Ashley's breath caught. She turned away, pacing. This is too much, she said. I can't mix my survival with someone like you. Jack followed her with his eyes. Someone like me? Ashley stopped. Someone who has everything. Jack stood. You think money means safety? Ashley turned back, startled by the edge in his voice. I've built everything I have from nothing, Jack said. I know what it's like to be one mistake away from losing everything. Ashley shook her head. You don't know what it's like to be invisible. Jack stepped closer. I know what it's like to be ignored until you prove your worth. Silence fell between them. Jack softened his voice. Let me help in a way that doesn't insult you. Ashley whispered, How? Jack answered carefully. I can help you secure housing legally, sponsor your visa extension if needed, connect you with stable students. Ashley's hands trembled. That's too much. Jack shook his head. That's structure, not charity. Ashley closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed to run. But running had brought her here. She opened her eyes. I don't want people thinking I'm using you. Jack's answer was immediate. Then we make everything transparent. Ashley looked at him. For the first time since the robbery, she saw it clearly. Jack wasn't trying to control her. He was offering a bridge. Ashley exhaled shakily. I need time. Jack nodded. Take it. Ashley walked toward the elevator. Before the doors closed, Jack said quietly, No matter what you decide, you don't have to face this alone. Ashley rode down in silence. Outside Gyeongnam, the city lights flickered. Her phone buzzed again. Another email, this time from Immigration Services. Her visa appointment had been moved up, sooner than expected. Ashley's heart sank. Everything was accelerating, and she didn't know whether to run back to Jack Trung or walk away before she fell. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Should someone accept help when it comes with feelings attached? Because in the next scene, Ashley will make a decision that risks her pride, and Jack will show her just how far he's willing to go. Ashley didn't go home right away after leaving Gyeongnam Landmark 72. She walked, past glass buildings, past motorbikes, past people laughing into their phones, like the world was simple and forgiving. Her mind replayed Jack's words over and over. I don't want to save you. I want to stand with you. She hated how much that sentence stayed with her, because it felt dangerous. Back in her apartment on Ngoc Van Street, Ashley dropped her bag and sat on the floor with her back against the wall. The ceiling fan spun lazily above her, clicking on the third rotation like it always did. She stared at her passport again. 30 days. That number followed her like a shadow. The next morning, Ashley woke up to 3 missed calls, all from the same number, her landlord. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and called back. The conversation was short, cold. The rent increase was final. If she couldn't pay the new deposit by the end of the month, she would need to move out. Ashley ended the call and stared at the wall. Her phone buzzed again. Jack. Did you sleep? Ashley hesitated. Then she typed the truth. Ashley. No, my landlord confirmed everything. The reply came almost instantly. Jack, can I come see you? Ashley's heart jumped. Ashley. No, not here. A pause. Then, Jack. Then meet me, somewhere public. You choose. Ashley thought for a moment. Ashley. Westlake, near the walking path. Jack. I'll be there. By late afternoon, the sky over Westlake was gray and heavy. Ashley sat on a bench, hands folded tightly in her lap, watching the water ripple. Jack arrived quietly, dressed simply again. No sign of the man who ran a real estate empire. He sat beside her, leaving space. They watched the lake in silence. Then Ashley spoke. I don't want you fixing my life, she said quietly. Jack nodded. I know. Ashley turned to him. But I also can't pretend I don't need help. Jack met her eyes. Those two things can exist at the same time. Ashley swallowed. I've spent my whole life surviving on my own, she said. If I let you help me, I'm scared I'll lose myself. Jack listened without interrupting. You won't, he said finally. Because I'm not replacing your strength. I'm supporting it. Ashley laughed bitterly. You make it sound simple. Jack shook his head. It's not. That's why I'm asking you to agree to conditions. Ashley looked at him, surprised. Conditions? Yes, Jack said. Rules, boundaries, transparency. Ashley waited. I'll help you find stable housing, under your name, your lease, Jack said. I'll connect you with parents who can pay fairly for your work. Nothing hidden, no favors. Ashley's breath caught. And the visa? She asked quietly. Jack answered calmly. If you want, my company can sponsor it legally. Not me personally. The company. Ashley stared at him. You've thought this through, she whispered. Jack nodded. Because I respect you. Silence settled between them again. Then Ashley asked the question she'd been avoiding. And what about us? Jack didn't hesitate. I won't touch you, he said. I won't pressure you. And if you say stop at any point, I stop. Ashley's throat tightened. But, Jack continued, voice softer, I won't lie and say I don't feel something. Ashley closed her eyes. That honesty scared her more than manipulation ever could. She opened her eyes and looked at him. I don't want to be indebted to you, she said. Jack's gaze stayed steady. Then don't be. Ashley frowned. That's not how power works. Jack leaned forward slightly. Then let me lower mine. Ashley blinked. What? Jack's voice was calm. Everything will be written. Contracts, rates, paper trails. If anyone ever accuses you of using me, the truth will protect you. Ashley felt her chest tighten. This wasn't a man trying to buy affection. This was a man trying to remove fear. Ashley exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Jack didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He nodded respectfully. Okay, he repeated. Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast, but not chaotically. Jack's assistant contacted Ashley with a list of available apartments in Tay Ho district. Modest, affordable, close to her current students. Ashley chose one herself. She signed the lease herself. Jack never came inside. Parents. Jack introduced her to, paid fair rates, and treated her with respect. No discounts, no pity. Ashley's schedule stabilized. Her visa appointment went smoothly. The sponsorship was handled professionally, quietly. No drama, no headlines. Ashley felt something she hadn't felt in months. Relief. One evening, after her last class, Ashley found Jack waiting outside the building, not to check on her, but to walk with her. They walked along the lake, side by side, not touching, but closer now. I want to be honest, Ashley said suddenly. Jack stopped. Okay. I'm starting to care about you, she said softly. And that scares me. Jack's expression didn't change. I'm scared too. Ashley laughed quietly. You don't look scared. Jack met her gaze. Because I've learned fear doesn't mean stop. It means be careful. Ashley nodded. They continued walking. A breeze moved across the water. Ashley felt lighter. But fate wasn't finished testing her. That night, as she returned to her old apartment to pack the last of her things, she found a folded piece of paper slipped under the door. No name, no stamp, just 4 words written in thick black ink. Go back home. Ashley's hands began to shake. The city outside was loud, but inside the hallway, she felt very alone again. Her phone buzzed. Jack, did you get home? Ashley stared at the message, then at the note. Her fingers trembled as she typed. Ashley, someone left something at my door. Jack replied immediately. Jack, stay where you are. I'm coming. Ashley's heart pounded, because the help she had finally accepted was about to be tested by fear, and the line between kindness and danger was about to blur. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below, should someone accept love when it means becoming visible? Because in the next scene, the threat becomes real, and Jack will have to choose how far he's willing to go to protect Ashley. Ashley stood frozen in the narrow hallway outside her old apartment on Tongoc Van Street, the folded note trembling in her hand. Go back home. The words felt heavier than the robbery, heavier than the rent notice, because this wasn't about money. It was about being unwanted. Her phone buzzed again. Jack, I'm 5 minutes away. Don't open the door for anyone. Ashley leaned against the wall, heart pounding so hard it made her dizzy. The hallway lights flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere downstairs, a door slammed. She flinched. She had survived so much alone, but fear has a way of making solitude feel unbearable. When footsteps echoed on the stairs, Ashley's breath caught. Then she heard his voice. Ashley? She turned. Jack stood at the end of the hallway, jaw tight, eyes alert. He moved toward her without hesitation, scanning every door, every shadow. You okay? He asked quietly. Ashley nodded, but her hands betrayed her, shaking as she passed him the note. Jack read it once. His expression hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. This isn't random, he said, and it ends tonight. Ashley swallowed. I don't want trouble. Jack met her eyes. Neither do I. That's why we handle it properly. He took out his phone and made a call, voice low, controlled, speaking Vietnamese. Ashley caught fragments: security, cameras, building management. When he hung up, he turned back to her. You're not staying here another night, he said. Ashley shook her head instinctively. Jack, I can't just… Yes, he interrupted gently. You can. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He stated it like a fact. Your new apartment is ready, Jack continued. Keys are with the agent. It's clean, safe, and no one knows the address except you. Ashley stared at him. You planned this. Jack nodded. I hoped we wouldn't need it so soon. Tears burned behind Ashley's eyes. I hate that I need this, she whispered. Jack stepped closer, but stopped at a respectful distance. Needing safety isn't weakness, he said. It's survival. They left the building together. Jack didn't let her walk behind him. Outside, the street looked the same. Vendors closing up, motorbikes passing, people living their lives. No one knew what had just happened. In the car, Ashley finally let herself breathe. Her chest shook as the fear drained out, replaced by exhaustion. Jack watched her from the passenger seat, saying nothing, letting silence do its work. They arrived at the new apartment in Tai Ho district just after midnight. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, bright, quiet. Ashley stepped inside and felt something unfamiliar. Relief. Jack handed her the keys. Get some rest, he said. I'll have security check the area regularly. Ashley turned to him, eyes tired but clear. You don't have to do all this, she said. Jack met her gaze. I know. Ashley hesitated, then asked the question that had been building in her chest. Why are you really doing this? Jack didn't deflect. He didn't soften it. Because I care about you, he said simply. And because if I walked away now, I'd hate the man I'd be tomorrow. Ashley felt her heart twist painfully. She nodded once. Thank you. Jack turned to leave. Then Ashley spoke again. Jack. He stopped. She stepped closer, not touching, but close enough to feel his presence. I'm scared, she admitted. Jack's voice was low. I know. Ashley swallowed. Stay, just for a few minutes. Jack studied her face, searching for hesitation, doubt, fear. He saw all three. And still, he stayed. They sat on opposite sides of the small living room, shoes still on, the city quiet outside. Minutes passed. Then Ashley spoke again. "I came to Vietnam because I wanted to matter to someone," she said, "to make a difference." Jack listened. "I didn't expect to feel so small here sometimes," she continued, "or so visible." Jack nodded. "Visibility is dangerous when people decide they own it." Ashley looked at him. "And you?" Jack exhaled slowly. "I've spent my life building walls. Power, distance, control." He glanced at her. "You walked into my life and didn't want any of it," he said. "That's rare." Ashley's lips trembled. "I still don't." Jack smiled faintly. "That's why I trust you." Silence settled again. This one felt different, not heavy, intimate. Ashley stood and walked toward the window, staring out at the quiet street. "I don't know what this is," she said softly. Jack stood too, a few steps behind her. "I don't either," he replied. "But I know what it isn't." Ashley turned. "What?" Jack met her eyes. "It isn't control. It isn't debt. And it isn't temporary." Ashley's breath caught. She looked away again, fighting the pull in her chest. "Tomorrow," she said quickly. "I still want to teach. I don't want to hide." Jack nodded. "You won't." Ashley turned back to him. "And if this gets worse?" she asked. Jack's answer was immediate. "Then we face it together." Ashley felt tears finally spill over. She laughed softly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't usually—" Jack shook his head. "Don't apologize." Ashley wiped her cheeks. "You should go," she said. "Before I say something I can't take back." Jack smiled gently. "I'll go," he said, "but not far." At the door, he paused. "One more thing," he said. Ashley looked up. "No matter what happens," Jack said, "you belong here, in this city, in this life." Ashley nodded, unable to speak. After he left, Ashley locked the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. For the first time since the robbery, she didn't feel hunted. She felt protected. But outside, someone was watching. Across the street, a figure stood briefly under a streetlight, then disappeared. And Ashley didn't know it yet, but the threat wasn't over. It was only changing shape. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. What would you do if kindness put you in danger? Because in the next scene, the truth comes into the open, and Jack's world collides with Ashley's in a way neither of them can control. Morning arrived softly in Hanoi, sunlight filtering through thin curtains in Ashley's new apartment in Tai Ho district. The city sounded the same, motorbikes, distant horns, vendors calling, but inside her chest, something had shifted. Ashley stood at the kitchen sink, holding a mug of tea she hadn't touched. For the first time in weeks, she had slept, not deeply, but without waking in panic. Her phone buzzed. "Jack. Did you rest?" Ashley smiled faintly before replying. "Ashley. A little. Thank you for last night." A pause. Then, "Jack. I meant every word." Ashley stared at the message longer than necessary. She dressed and headed out to teach, refusing to let fear steal the one thing that gave her purpose. Her first class that day was with 6 children near Enki Tam. The kids greeted her with laughter, pulling at her hands, asking her to teach them new words. Ashley smiled and wrote on the board, "Courage." "What does this mean?" she asked. A little girl raised her hand. "Not scared?" Ashley nodded gently. "Scared, but you do it anyway." She didn't realize she was teaching herself too. By midday, the rumors started. Not about her. About Jack Trung. Whispers passed through cafes, offices, and online groups. The CEO of Ban Mai Real Estate had been seen escorting a foreign woman. He had intervened in a robbery. He had moved her to a new apartment. Nothing was confirmed. But in a city like Hanoi, curiosity traveled faster than truth. Ashley felt it in the way people looked at her now. Longer glances, questions that hovered without being asked. That afternoon, Jack called. "Can we talk?" he asked. "In person." Ashley hesitated. "About what?" "About what's coming," Jack said calmly. They met at a quiet cafe near West Lake, tucked away from crowds. Jack arrived looking composed, but Ashley could see the tension in his shoulders. "It's starting," he said without preamble. Ashley's stomach tightened. "What is?" "People are asking questions," Jack replied. "About you. About me." Ashley inhaled slowly. "I don't want to hide," Jack nodded. "I know, but visibility has a cost." Ashley leaned forward. "I won't disappear to make things easier for you." Jack met her gaze. "I wouldn't let you." Ashley studied his face. "You're risking your reputation." Jack's answer was immediate. "I'm choosing it." Ashley's chest tightened. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why choose this?" Jack didn't soften it. "Because walking away would be easier," he said. "And I don't respect myself when I choose easy." Ashley looked down at her hands. "I don't want to be the reason you lose anything," she whispered. Jack leaned forward slightly. "You're not the reason. Fear is." Ashley nodded slowly. Then Jack said something that made her look up. "I want to make this public," he said. Ashley froze. "Public?" "Yes," Jack replied. "Not as gossip, as truth." Ashley's heart pounded. "That will bring more attention, more judgment." Jack nodded. "Yes." Ashley swallowed. "And if it hurts my work, my students?" Jack's voice was steady. "Then I protect that too." Ashley laughed softly, incredulous. "You can't protect everything." Jack met her eyes. "I can try." Silence stretched between them. Then Ashley said the words she'd been holding back. "I don't want to be hidden," she said. "But I don't want to be owned either." Jack nodded. "Then we do this your way." Ashley blinked. "My way?" "Yes," Jack said. "We set boundaries. We control the narrative. You don't become a story. I become accountable." Ashley stared at him. That was new. Men with power didn't offer accountability. They offered control. Ashley exhaled. "Okay," she said, but slowly. Jack's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Agreed." As they stood to leave, Ashley noticed two men at a table nearby fall silent when Jack walked past. The whispers followed them out onto the street. Ashley felt exposed. She stopped walking. "Jack," she said quietly. "Are you sure?" Jack turned. She searched his face, looking for regret. She didn't find any. "I'm sure," he said. "Because whatever happens, I won't leave you alone in it." Ashley's throat tightened. She nodded once. That evening, Jack released a simple internal statement to his company. No names, no details, just a reminder. Personal attacks, harassment, or intimidation of any individual connected to this company will not be tolerated. This is not negotiable. The message spread. Fast. Some applauded. Some bristled. But everyone understood one thing. Jack Trung had drawn a line, and Ashley Brown was on the side he was defending. That night, Ashley walked home alone, not because she had to, but because she wanted to prove something to herself. The streets were quieter now. She felt eyes on her, but also felt something new. Confidence. At her door, she paused. Her phone buzzed. "Jack, you okay?" Ashley smiled softly. "Ashley." "Yes, I'm stronger than I thought." A pause, then, "Jack." "I know." Ashley leaned against the door, heart full and afraid at the same time, because this wasn't just about safety anymore. It was about choice, and she was choosing him too. But somewhere in the city, someone else was watching, and they didn't like the choice she'd made. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Should love require courage as much as survival? Because in the next scene, the tension breaks into the open, and Ashley and Jack will have to stand together in front of the world. The morning the story broke, Hanoi felt louder than usual. Ashley noticed it on her walk to class, the way people glanced twice, the way phones lifted a second too long, the way whispers followed her steps near West Lake. She hadn't read the article yet. She didn't need to. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages from parents, from fellow teachers, from numbers she didn't recognize. She stopped at a quiet corner near Quang An Street and finally opened the link someone had sent. Vietnamese real estate CEO intervenes to protect American teacher after street robbery. There was a photo. Not dramatic, not staged. Just Jack Trung walking beside her, his hand slightly out in front of her like a shield. The article didn't accuse her, but it didn't protect her either. It speculated, it questioned motives. It asked the question she'd been dreading. Why would a powerful man go this far for a foreign woman? Ashley's chest tightened. This was the cost Jack had warned her about. Visibility. Her phone rang. "Jack." She answered immediately. "I saw it." "I know," Jack said calmly. "Are you okay?" Ashley exhaled slowly. "I think so." "I'm downstairs," he said. "Outside your class." Ashley looked up. Across the street, Jack stood near his car, composed as ever, but his eyes searched the crowd until they found her. Something steadied inside her. She crossed the street. Jack didn't touch her. He simply asked, "Do you want to teach today?" Ashley nodded. "Yes." "I'll wait," Jack said. "However long you need." Ashley went inside. The children were already seated, notebooks open. "Teacher Ashley," one boy said, tilting his head, "why are you on the phone?" Ashley smiled gently. "Because sometimes adults make noise." The children laughed. She taught for 2 hours. She didn't rush. She didn't hide. And when class ended, the parents thanked her, some warmly, some cautiously. Ashley accepted all of it. Outside, Jack fell into step beside her. "They're going to ask for a statement," he said quietly. "Media." Ashley nodded. "I know." Jack stopped walking. "You don't have to say anything." Ashley looked at him. Then she shook her head. "I don't want you speaking for me," she said. "Not this." Jack's eyes softened. "I was hoping you'd say that." They went to a small meeting room inside Ban Mai Real Estate, not the main office, not a boardroom, neutral ground. Ashley sat at the table, hands folded. A communications advisor explained options. Ashley listened, then spoke. "I'm not going to explain my trauma," she said calmly, "and I'm not going to apologize for needing help." Jack watched her, quiet and attentive. "I want to talk about why kindness matters," Ashley continued, "and why ignoring someone in danger is worse than helping them." The advisor nodded. "That's powerful." Jack met her eyes. "Are you ready?" Ashley inhaled deeply. "Yes." That afternoon, a short video statement was released. Ashley stood alone against a simple background. No makeup, no script, just her voice. "I came to Vietnam to teach," she said. "I love this country, I love my students. When I was robbed, I asked for help, and most people were afraid." She paused. "One person was not," she continued. "Jack Trung didn't help me because of power or status. He helped me because it was right." She looked directly into the camera. "I am not a story," Ashley said. "I am a person, and kindness should never be questioned." The video spread faster than the article ever had. Comments shifted. Support poured in. Teachers shared it. Parents shared it. Strangers wrote messages apologizing for the silence on the street. That night, Ashley sat by the window of her new apartment, phone buzzing non-stop. Jack stood behind her, a respectful distance away. "You were brave," he said quietly. Ashley smiled faintly. "I was terrified." Jack nodded. Those two things often travel together. Ashley turned to him. "Are you okay?" she asked. "This affects your company." Jack shrugged slightly. "It strengthens it." Ashley studied his face. "You're sure?" Jack met her gaze. "I didn't ban my real estate to hide from doing the right thing." Ashley felt something warm settle in her chest. The city outside glittered. For the first time since coming to Hanoi, she didn't feel like a guest. She felt rooted. Later that evening, they walked along West Lake, the air cool and calm. People passed them. Some recognized them. Some smiled. Some whispered. Ashley felt it all, and didn't shrink. She stopped near the water. "Jack," she said softly. He turned. "I don't know where this leads," she said, "but I know I don't want to walk it alone." Jack stepped closer, not touching, but close enough. "I won't rush you," he said, "but I won't step away either." Ashley nodded. She reached out then, slowly, and took his hand. It wasn't dramatic. It was certain. Across the lake, the lights reflected like 1,000 small promises. But somewhere beyond the calm, decisions were forming. Because when the world finally looks at you, it doesn't just watch, it judges. And the next step Ashley and Jack would take would no longer be private. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with this story. Like the video and comment below. Would you speak up if silence felt safer? Because in the final scene, love is tested one last time. And Jack Trung makes a promise that will change both of their lives forever. The city slowed down after the noise faded. Weeks passed. The headlines disappeared. The whispers softened. And what remained was quieter, but stronger. Ashley stood on the balcony of her apartment in Tay Ho district, watching the morning light spread across West Lake. The air smelled like rain and coffee drifting up from the street below. For the first time since she arrived in Vietnam, her life felt steady. Not perfect, but real. Behind her, Jack buttoned the cuff of his shirt, movements calm and unhurried. He had learned something in the past months, how to exist without armor. "You're thinking again," he said. Ashley smiled without turning. "I always think." Jack walked closer, stopping beside her. "Good thoughts or heavy ones?" Ashley considered it. "Both, but they don't scare me anymore." Jack nodded. "That means you're home." She turned then, meeting his eyes. "You know," Ashley said softly, "I used to think love was something dramatic, loud, dangerous." Jack tilted his head. "And now?" "Now I think it's this," she said. "Quiet, choosing each other every day." Jack didn't answer. He reached into his pocket. Ashley noticed the movement and froze. "Jack?" He exhaled slowly, then knelt. Right there on the balcony. No crowd, no cameras, no spectacle. Just Hanoi breathing around them. Ashley's heart stopped. "Ashley Brown," Jack said, voice steady but low. "I didn't plan to fall in love. I planned buildings, structures, control." He looked up at her. Then you screamed for help on a street where everyone else looked away, he continued, and I saw who I wanted to be. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. I can't promise you a perfect life, Jack said, but I promise you this. Wherever we stand, you won't stand alone. He opened his hand, a simple ring, elegant, unassuming. Will you marry me? He asked. Ashley laughed through tears. You didn't even let me say I love you first. Jack smiled. You show it. Ashley didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. I will. Jack stood, pulling her into an embrace that felt like relief. They didn't rush the wedding. They didn't hide it either. 3 months later, on a quiet afternoon near West Lake, they stood together beneath simple white flowers and soft lanterns. Friends, students, colleagues, children. Ashley Todd sat in the front row, grinning like they understood something important. Ashley walked down the aisle in a simple dress, her hair natural, her steps steady. Jack waited, eyes fixed on her like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. Their vows were simple. I choose you, Ashley said, in every country, in every season. I choose you, Jack replied. In public, in private, always. When they kissed, the applause was gentle, not explosive, but full. That night, after the guests left and the lights dimmed, Ashley and Jack walked alone along the water. You know, Ashley said quietly, I almost left Vietnam. Jack squeezed her hand. I know. And you almost stayed silent, she added. Jack smiled faintly. I know that too. They stopped near the edge of West Lake, the city reflecting back at them. Do you regret it? Ashley asked. Jack didn't hesitate, not for a second. Ashley leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. I came here to teach English, she said. I didn't expect to learn how to stay. Jack kissed the top of her head. You taught me how to stand. The city moved on around them, busy, imperfect, alive, but in that moment, nothing was missing. If you're listening, subscribe to this channel and stay with us for more stories about courage, love, and the quiet moments that change everything. Like this video and leave a comment below. Do you believe one act of kindness can alter an entire life? Because sometimes, the greatest love stories don't begin with romance. They begin with someone choosing not to walk away.